acted very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
Welcome to the War Cry Podcast. I'm your host, Jehovah Tiger, and welcome to Patreon. This is a Patreon exclusive episode, and on this episode, I'll be talking about Martha Stewart. And you guys are probably like, Yehola, what are you talking about Martha Stewart for? Well, her documentary just dropped just about a week ago. And my entire life, I always thought she was a really nice lady. But it turns out she is not. And she's got demons. And she's kind of a hypocrite. But I guess we kind of all are in a sense. This is the first Patreon episode. This will only be shown on Patreon. A clip will be posted to the main feed. But I appreciate everyone who has continued to support the podcast. And let's get this thing ripped. Let's get this thing rolling. Jeez. So, Martha Stewart. I can't describe the type of woman that just does not give a shit. Like, she don't give no facts about anything. She about her money, she about herself, and she about her corporation. She was born, back in those days where women had to take a back seat to men. And one thing about her that I thought was really interesting, especially when it comes to like her upbringing, her dad, and be in mind, a lot of the men in that time, like to have control of things. There was a scene that she talked about when she was growing up, when they were working on the garden. And she basically wasn't doing it right, or wasn't doing it up to standard to her dad's liking. And he goes, "You're not doing it right. You do it like this." And just berated her. Just went off on her. Just went crazy on her. And, she's, 6, 7 years old. I have a story that, my granddad, man, my great-grandpa, He was kind of like that. He was kind of rude about it. He was a real Christian guy, and I think he meant well. But if it wasn't up to his liking, he would tell you, and he would rip you a new one, rip your ass a new one. And one time we were painting this fence out in front of the house, and my great grandma had just passed, I believe, maybe a year or two before that. And, he just wanted things how she wanted it, which I understand as I'm older now, and I understand that. But at the time, I remember being heated. I was like 7, 8, maybe. I was in elementary school for sure. And I looked at, he goes, "This ain't right. He's like, this is not how this is supposed to be done. You do it like this. You need to go back, buy the right paint," and just was going off on my nana. I said, no. I ain't say nothing because I'm elementary school, and he's been doing this for a long time. But Martha's dad reminded me of him in that same generation of just having absolute control over what their life is. And, for good and for worse. But, she talked about her dad, never showing her love. And even Martha's mom was quoted in saying, I should have held her more. I should have hugged her more. And so you gotta get an idea who Martha Stewart is, just in her, as she gets older, and the streets, man, the Twitter streets, the X streets, they was saying Martha Stewart was a little bit of a baddie, that she got them things on her. I don't know. The jury's out for me. Because one thing that I don't like is someone with a lazy eye. If you look Martha dead in her face, that one eye just kind of tilts just a little bit. You just gotta discard you. Gotta get you out of here for that. But it's genetic, so it's all right. But I don't know. The Twitter streets was saying that Martha was a baddie. Maybe she was. The jury's out for me. But you see during the documentary of like as she got into like college age that she was trying to start to take over control of her life from her parents and her upbringing. She meets this young man, her husband, her soon to be husband, and they travel the world, and that's when she decided, I'm gonna be a homemaker. I want to help women have the most beautiful things that they can. And so she goes on these different adventures in Europe, learning culture. And I ain't gonna front. I didn't realize this until the documentary just flat out tells you. But I didn't know. You think about all the influencers, all the people getting paid for the dumbest of shit. I understand that Martha is the original influencer. Because I think I still have recipes from her from the 70s. I have a box from my grandma on my mom's side, or on my nana's side. Her mom. She had a little cookbook of Martha Stewart recipes. I believe. I need to go double check. But I saw these recipes. I'm like, man, nobody eats this stuff anymore. It was old school, hearty vegetable beef, stew, that type of stuff. Potatoes, a lot of butter. And for some of y'all, it's bringing back memories. And I hate to hit y'all like that with the hunger, but she was doing her thing. And this guy that she meets, she come from a real kind of rags to riches type life. Well, she meets this guy, and I like him, but he's very rich. He's very rich. In the documentary, okay, and this is one thing too about what Netflix is doing with their documentary, especially when it's about one person. They have done an excellent job of allowing the person. So, they did the Vince McMahon documentary here recently, and they allowed him. They put him on camera, and they allowed him to take the narrative of the documentary wherever the hell he wanted to take it. And they do the same thing with Martha. And Martha's sitting there, and she's telling how she thinks the truth was and how her life was. And, maybe is it the truth? We don't know. But the producers do an excellent, and whoever went on the back end, and they find all these people who just either shit on Martha or say, hey, she's crazy, she's insane. They did their research on Martha. I mean, I guess she's been around for a long time. She's got a lot of stuff going on. But, they did the same thing with Vince McMahon. Vince would say, or no, here, I'll give an example in this documentary with Martha Stewart. So, there was a little scene, and this made the rounds on TikTok and Twitter. And this makes, to me, this is why I have to review this documentary of Martha Stewart and put it on the Patreon, because we're about to get into some murky territory here. She goes into detail about how her husband had all these women that he was having sex with and messing around with and hitting the snag button with. And she goes and says he's disgusting. She went, ladies, women out there, if you have a man who cheats on you all the time, you need to leave and move on from that relationship now. And she's like, but, I couldn't. Because the producers, they go, well, Martha goes, well, I don't think he ever knew that I did that. that I don't ever think. Um, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting it backwards here. So Martha calls him disgusting. All these, oh, he's the worst man ever. And the producer goes, didn't you have an affair too, Martha? And Martha had this look like, oh, you got my ass. You got me. I did. And she goes, it was nothing. It was a very attractive Irishman when I was a stockbroker. We did, it was nothing. It was just a short fling. It meant nothing to me. And she goes, I don't even think my husband even knew at the time or even knew. And the producer goes, he told us that you confessed to him, like, before your divorce. Or, around that time. And Martha goes, oh, did I? And it has come out that she cheated first, and that caused him to cheat. Martha, you are diabolical. Are you for real? I had this picture of you being the greatest wife, the greatest homemaker, the greatest mother. And you go and say it meant nothing, and then you went on to roast him for 5 minutes about how terrible he was. And then you cheated first. Martha. No. And this goes back to, and I'm going to say this. Well, how come when we cheat as men, we get hit hard? Oh, you're terrible. You a POS. You this, you that. And when the facts come out and maybe the woman cheated first, like in this situation, it was nothing. It meant nothing. I just was working hard as a stockbroker. We got drunk one night. That's crazy to allow that. And the fact that it bothered him up until they got divorced. And that was the reason why he continued to cheat on her. And there's one thing I gotta say too, fellas. Hey, sometimes we just gotta move on. We don't have to do the petty stuff, or we gotta just tick for tat. Oh, you gonna do that to me? I got you back. But Martha admitting, basically forgetting that she cheated first, and was trying to say the narrative was that, he is this terrible person because he's cheated on me so many times, but she was the catalyst, is crazy. That is some savagery among, that's like Kobe Bryant. Kobe used to always say, I don't care about the last shot, I always look forward to the next shot. That's Martha. So she went on to, she went up to be like a stockbroker, like on Wall Street, and was like, for real, for real. Like, getting a bunch of money. But what derailed that for her, which then turned her into a homemaker, was the fact that she had lost like $25 million in a day or something crazy, like some crazy amount of money. She made a bad deal, and next thing you know, she lost her firm like a ton of money. And she was like, I got to get out of here. And so Martha is a savage. I didn't realize how much of a savage. And the fact, too, is that she cheats on him, and he's basically funding her whole operation until she can make the money to, get it back to him. That is crazy, man. Dang, Martha, just wilding out like that. And so she goes on. He funds her all her thing, and she ends up making money, and she becomes like a household name, and and then obviously she goes on to do Martha Stewart Living and all this stuff. But another part that I thought was so crazy too. So you guys remember during COVID, Ellen DeGeneres, Jennifer Lopez, all these celebrities were getting exposed for treating their people so horrifically, and so just like making them seem like the smallest of matter. And Martha was not immune to that. They had multiple people on there and like saying basically that she was just like a tyrant, like she was brutal to these people. And they even at the end of the documentary, when she's going through her prison thing, like right before she goes to prison, the cameras catch her berating a staffer while they were trying to get her Easter special out before she went to prison, and basically just going off on her. Like, oh, you should have used a larger knife. Why are you cutting oranges with a small knife? What is wrong with you? Why are you even doing this? Do I need to replace you? Like, just going off on this woman. And it's like over the size of a knife. That is just a sample size. When she went to for everyone, she went to minimum federal prison for insider trading. Basically her friend dimed her out. So while Martha Stewart was in Mexico, she had mentioned to her friend that, hey, so and so made this trade, I'm going to sell too. And I am going to make a lot of money off this. I'm going to short the stock, basically. Well, that's illegal because your best friend, Westlick, I think was his name, he sold the stock right before the FDA didn't push through a drug. So Martha kind of was laughing, like, because she knew the insider stuff. Well, she gets basically, brought into this, and I forgot how much people hated her. I always thought of Martha Stewart as Martha Stewart living. Like, I even remember watching her, like, in the morning sometimes, whenever she was on. Like, I remember watching her on Saturdays. I even remember watching her, like, on, like, right before holidays. And I forgot how many people hated her. Like, they were so happy that she was, basically taking the hit for this. But it gave her street cred. It really did. She was talking about, well, I'll get to that. But so during the trial, her best friend and her broker's assistant basically dimed her out and said, yeah, we gave her the tip, and she, did what she did with it. But then they call her in and basically just lies and says, oh, I don't know where I got it. I don't recall. I was in Mexico. I didn't have my phone on me. There was no way to get a hold of me. And come to find out, she knew, no, she's lying. So she lied. That's why she went. And oddly enough, and this is like full circle when it comes to kind of BS investigations. Now, it is a fact that the Russia collusion thing from the 2016 election is false. That was not a thing. Everyone knows it was. Everyone calls it the Russia hoax. The same guy that brought up that and was involved in the Russia hoax, James Comey, was involved with Martha Stewart. Oddly enough, this is another thing that kind of ties James Comey, Trump, and Martha, is the guy that produced The Apprentice with Donald Trump also produced Martha and her show. Mark Burnett, who also is a part of Survivor. He does some producing for Survivor for CBS. So it's weird that James Comey went after people that were connected to CBS and all these different shows. That's kind of interesting. But he basically said that she didn't do anything criminal, but you lied to the feds, and we got to give you time. So they threw basically the book at her. They gave her 5 months in prison, 2 years of probation, 5 months in house arrest, basically. And I ain't gonna lie, man, I forgot about all this. Like, it's crazy when you're like reminded about a time like 2005, 2006. That's like a peak time. WWE was, going off crazy. It was like a really great time for me in that sense. And then also too, like, the Lakers were, not the best, but they were, making their way up. But like Martha Stewart went to jail or went to prison for 5 months, and like I forgot that like there was an inmate that made her like a little scarf or whatever, or a little poncho, and she wore it for like months. And then what's crazy about her in her greediness is she started making those same like ponchos and selling them, and people were buying them. Like when she was doing her Martha Stewart Living or whatever, the show after she got to prison, people in the crowd were just wearing ponchos. Buddy, it is 100 degrees out here. What are you wearing a poncho for? A poorly knitted poncho. Anyways, so she goes on to do that show with Mark Burnett, and it's not really that hit. I remember watching it. One of my favorite episodes too, and they showed a part of it, was the one with Robin Williams, because Robin Williams just didn't know how to because Martha Stewart was trying to be all serious about cooking, and he's over there just cracking jokes and not really knowing what's going on, and you could tell Martha was kind of irritated. And to kind of rewind, I think the nail in the coffin for her in public before she went to prison is she was on a show like during the investigation, and she was cooking and she was making like a salad or something, cutting up onions or something. And the lady who had to be like a CBS affiliate or whoever, morning show, kept asking her questions about the stinking indictment and the investigation and all this stuff of her friend. And Martha just kept saying, "I do not want to talk about this." And she looks at the lady dead in the face, and they always talk about how cold she was when she was mad. Like when she got angry, you could tell, and there was like this fire in her eyes. It's just so icy, icy fire. And she goes, "I just want to make my salad," and says it just like that. And man, I forgot about all. Like I'm saying, guys, I forgot a lot about this. If you're a Martha Stewart person, you followed her life and career. Man, she was a hole, man. It makes me look at her a little bit different in the sense of like her basically just being, mean to everybody. And like even the guy who was like on the stand for the insider trading, testifying against her, he said, "I've never had anyone make animal noises." And he said it sounded like an angry dolphin every time that he tried to tell her that, a certain trade or whatever wasn't working or didn't look like it was going to be successful. And so there's just a lot that came out about her in her trial. But her prison time was kind of crazy too. So like she did, she's rich, thinks she can do whatever she wants, above the law type, attitude, arrogant. And so she goes, and literally her first or second day, she's walking and she sees two ladies who don't look like, they should belong there, like in the prison. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, I really love your outfit," and actually bumps into, one of the ladies. And come to find out, it was like one of those not undercover, but like one of those, plainclothes guards. She gets solitary confinement for like over 24 hours. And I'm like, y'all's doing Martha crazy in there. How's she going to get solitary confinement for just a brief touch? And I just thought that was crazy too about that. And so basically she kind of just made it through, and she was, helping the ladies with the gardening and, things like that. But as you move on into her life, they talk about her divorce and how she was afraid it was going to bother her. And then you get into like, as she's, her company is basically falling apart and she's getting older and she's been irrelevant. Nobody's really messing with her like that. She starts to get into the social media game, and she becomes the oldest woman to ever grace the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, which is kind of crazy because how are you going to be 70 and thirst trapping? That's crazy. And she was on Instagram thirst trapping. I know Young Gravy had a song about her talking about he wanted to mess around with Martha Stewart, which is kind of crazy. And that's why the streets was saying Martha had it back in the day. But that documentary opened my eyes to Martha Stewart. Like, she was really good friends with Snoop, and basically what got her back on the map was the roast of Justin Bieber, which I forgot about that too. I watched that. Man, I forgot Justin Bieber was cooked. Like he was making his way to prison or an OD. And I hope he's doing all right now with the whole Diddy thing. That's, I heard, the blind items are saying that he's not well, but I forgot he got roasted to smithereens, and Pete Davidson, everybody was cracking jokes on Martha, and Martha goes up there and does a good job, pretty funny stuff, and it's like it's almost like just a callback to like a different time. It's like Martha Stewart, is still relevant. Her and Snoop had their show, which was pretty funny. I saw a couple episodes of it, but the Martha Stewart documentary really opened my eyes to kind of who she is. Like, she is kind of serious, and she's diabolical. Like, she really is. Like, she's savage as hell. And they had to bring in the feminist thing, and men don't like when women are on top and things. I mean, yeah, that's probably true, especially in the money game. Women are not supposed to be making the money men are supposed to be making. I understand that kind of caveat. And towards the end, they're like, oh, she got, the raw deal because she was the, multi-billionaire. And, another thing, she lost like $1 billion while she was in prison, just like in the 5 months she was, in prison and house arrest, which is crazy. But she, like I said, man, she's cold like that. She got that killer instinct. And, I kind of felt bad for her daughter, too, in that. Like, her daughter just was yearning for her approval. Just like, please. Like, she would go above and beyond for her mom. And her mom would just be like, yeah, that's cool, thank you. Just cold-blooded like that. And that just all goes back to her childhood, man, that trauma. Like, having somebody, her dad basically was like a functional alcoholic. He would start his day off with, like, a cup of coffee. And this is nasty too. Basically, way it sounded like to me, like he was pouring red wine in his coffee, which I could be wrong when I heard that. Anyways, he would drink coffee and red wine in the morning, and basically just go through his day drunk. And like, she said that he wasn't like mean to her most times, but he just was not one to play with. And like, even during her engagement to her husband, like, the father's like, no. And I didn't know he was racist too. That's another thing too. I forgot to mention about her early life. Basically, said some slurs about him. Martha just said, yeah, he was a bigot and he didn't like people of a certain, race or, religion and stuff like that. So she went through a lot growing up. So I understand some of this, but it just comes to a point in time, man, where like, we gotta keep moving. You gotta grow, and everybody has to at some point. And it seems like Martha has ever since she got out of prison. She kind of was humbled, and that's she just kind of is moving in a different direction. And I think she's like in her 80s now. Like, so she's still savage. Like, a lady who used to really go at her in the New York Post, Martha's like, yeah, I'm glad she's dead. I'm glad for everyone who doesn't have to read her articles anymore. I was like, Martha, what are you doing? Just fanning the flames. Just flaming her. She said, I'm glad she's dead. That's crazy. I can't describe to y'all how diabolical Martha Stewart is. But there's a lot in there that is just, it's eye-opening to know that, like, this was someone who you thought was a nice person. And she thinks she's a nice person, and she was trying to defend one of the comments she made to somebody who she's like, basically, I made a comment about the teacups because he couldn't put his fingers around inside the loop of the teacup. She goes, I'm making, like, this is my brand. Why would I not be able to grab a teacup? Which, true, but there was just a whole lot more, but this Patreon episode, like I said, be expecting more. We're gonna get spicy on the Patreon. I'm gonna say things you're gonna hear me cussing a lot more than the regular feed because I want to talk about all types of things. When you join the Patreon, I have an ability where there's a chat, and so if you guys want to hop in here, when you guys join the Patreon, hop in the chat, and let me know. What kind of topics you want me to hit, or if you want me to review something, or like you see something. I'm working on trying to get my wife to join me for like a reality TV this season of Survivor is two cheeks of the same ass. It's horrific. Love is Blind just ended. I got there's some people on there and I'm like, nah, that's crazy. Um, there's just a lot of reality TV. 90 Day Fiance and Before the 90 Days, and so I might try to get my wife on here to try to do a roundup for all the shows we watch. But I'm gonna be having guests too as well. Like we're still do the spooky stuff, conspiracies. I am gonna drop a 9/11 on the Patreon. I'm afraid to do it on the regular feed. I don't know. It just makes me nervous talking about 9/11 because there's just a lot of juice. But I'm gonna be dropping a election preview. May do a review of the election. I want to talk about some topics that I find very interesting. And I'm not gonna hold back. I'm not gonna pull any punches on that. And just kind of my opinion. And you guys are gonna get on the Patreon a lot of more of my actual opinion. No unfiltered. So I appreciate everyone who supports the podcast. You can find me in the links on the profile on Patreon. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.